She was treated as a rookie until her enemy requested to parley with the Commander Rush Part 1, the dismissal. Transport ship landed on Tharsa 7 with a metallic groan that echoed across the barren moon's surface. Lieutenant Sarah Chen stepped out onto the landing platform, her uniform crisp and her service record spotless. She was fresh from the academy, carrying top marks in tactics and strategy, but none of that mattered to the veterans waiting for her. Commander Krath stood at the entrance to the forward base, his massive Rex frame towering over the human. His scarred face showed decades of combat experience, and his eyes held no warmth as they looked Sarah up and down. "Lieutenant Chen reporting for duty, sir," Sarah said, offering a sharp salute. Krath grunted. "Another academy graduate. Just what we need." He turned and walked into the base without another word. Sarah followed, feeling the weight of dismissal already settling on her shoulders. The Galactic Coalition. Forward base on Tharsa 7 was a military outpost on the edge of contested space. The crew was a mix of species massive Rex warriors who valued combat prowess above all else. Intellectual Quillen tacticians who prided themselves on superior strategic thinking, and swift Xanathi scouts known for their agility. Humans were still relatively new to the Coalition, and many veteran soldiers saw them as soft, inexperienced, and unproven. Over the next few weeks, Sarah learned just how little her academy achievements meant here. She was assigned to supply management, filing reports, and organizing duty rosters. When she attended tactical briefings, other officers barely acknowledged her presence. The enemy they faced was the Crimson Daggers, a pirate collective that had been terrorizing Coalition supply routes for months. Their leader, Warlord Zarkith, was a tactical genius who had humiliated every Coalition force sent against him. His raids were unpredictable, brutal, and devastatingly effective. During one staff meeting, Sarah studied the holographic display showing recent attack patterns. She noticed something, a rhythm to the chaos, a pattern hiding beneath the apparent randomness. She raised her hand hesitantly. "Commander, if I may suggest..." "No, you may not." Krath cut her off without looking at her. "We don't need theories from someone who's never seen real combat," a Quillen officer named Vest chuckled. "Stick to your spreadsheets, Lieutenant. Leave tactics to those who understand them." Sarah's face burned with embarrassment, but she said nothing. She returned to her quarters that night and pulled up every battle report she could access. She studied the Crimson Daggers' movements, their timing, their target selection. The pattern became clearer. But who would listen to her? The answer came sooner than she expected, and in the worst possible way. The alarm shattered the quiet of the night cycle. Sarah bolted from her bunk as explosions rocked the base. Red emergency lights flooded the corridors as she ran toward the command center. "All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill." The automated system blared the warning repeatedly. The Crimson Daggers had launched a massive surprise attack. Their ships appeared from behind a cluster of asteroids, completely bypassing the outer sensor grid. It was a perfect ambush. Sarah reached the command center just as an explosion threw Commander Krath across the room. He slammed into a bulkhead and collapsed, blood pooling beneath him. Medical teams rushed to evacuate him, but the damage was done. The base's command structure had just lost its head. Chaos erupted. Officers shouted conflicting orders. The Quillen tactical officer wanted to concentrate forces at the main gate. A Rex captain demanded they counterattack immediately. A Xanathi scout reported enemy forces, approaching from 3 directions. Sarah's hands trembled as she watched the tactical display. She could see it happening, the classic pincer movement. The feint at the main gate, drawing forces away from the real attack vector. The Crimson Daggers were herding them like prey. "Need to pull back from the western wall," she shouted, but her voice was lost in the chaos. The base shields flickered under sustained fire. Enemy forces were 60 seconds from breaching the perimeter. If they got inside, it would be a massacre. Then the base's artificial intelligence made an announcement that froze everyone in place. Command structure compromised. Initiating emergency protocol. Scanning for next qualified officer. A pause. Next qualified officer, Lieutenant Sarah Chen. Command authority transferred. Every head in the room turned to stare at the young human. Sarah felt her heart hammering in her chest. The tactical display showed enemy forces advancing on all sides. They had less than a minute. "Lieutenant, I don't think," Vess began. "Quiet," Sarah said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. She stepped to the command console, her training taking over. Her hands moved across the controls with sudden confidence. "All units, pull back from the northern and western walls immediately. Concentrate all forces in Quadrant 3. Divert all power from weapons to shields in Quadrant 1, and open the eastern gate." "What?" The Vrex captain's roar shook the room. "You're letting them in. She's surrendering the base," Vess accused. Sarah's eyes never left the display. "You have two choices. Trust me or die. Decide now." Something in her voice, a certainty that shouldn't exist in an academy graduate, made them hesitate. With no better options and no time to debate, they followed her orders. The eastern gate swung open. Crimson Dagger forces poured through, thinking they'd found an easy entry. But Sarah had repositioned every heavy weapon the base had to cover that exact approach. The attacking forces ran straight into a killing field. Simultaneously, the abandoned Quadrant 1 became an impenetrable wall of shields. Enemy forces trying to breach there found themselves unable to advance. Their attacks absorbed by shields. Running at maximum power, the forces concentrated in Quadrant 3 created overlapping fields of fire that caught the enemy in a crossfire. Within minutes, the Crimson Dagger's careful strategy collapsed into confusion. Sarah's voice remained calm as she directed the defense. Xanathi scouts flank left. Vrex heavy units advanced 20 meters. Quillen artillery, target coordinates Alpha 7. She wasn't guessing. She wasn't panicking. She was executing a defense that felt rehearsed. Like she'd done this 1,000 times before. 15 minutes after Sarah took command, the Crimson Daggers sounded their retreat. They fled back to their ships, leaving behind destroyed equipment and wounded fighters. The base was battered but standing. Coalition casualties were minimal, a miracle by any standard. The command center fell silent. Officers stared at Sarah as if seeing her for the first time. She stood at the console, breathing hard. Her hands finally shaking now that the immediate danger had passed. Commander Krath was carried in on a stretcher, conscious but badly injured. He looked at the tactical display, then at Sarah, confusion and suspicion mixing in his alien features. "How?" he managed to ask. Sarah didn't have an answer that wouldn't raise more questions. I just saw the pattern, sir." But everyone in that room knew the truth. What Sarah had just done wasn't beginner's luck. Those weren't academy tactics. That was the work of someone with real combat experience, someone who had commanded before. The question hanging in the air was simple. Who was Lieutenant Sarah Chen really? Outside in the debris field of the battle, the last Crimson Dagger ship paused before jumping to hyperspace. Its sensors had recorded everything about the defense. That data was already being transmitted to Warlord Zarkath, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Warlord was beginning to suspect something impossible. He recognized those tactics. End of Part 1. She was treated as a rookie until her enemy requested to parley with the commander. Part 2. Suspicion and shadows. The morning after the battle, Tharsa 7 should have been celebrating. They had survived an attack that should have destroyed them. But instead of celebration, an uneasy tension filled the base. Sarah sat alone in the command center reviewing damage reports. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the tactical display, saw the choices she'd made, felt the weight of command settling back onto her shoulders like an old, familiar burden. She heard footsteps behind her. Vess, the Quillen intelligence officer, approached with a data pad in hand. Her four eyes studied Sarah with an intensity that made the human uncomfortable. "Impressive work last night, Lieutenant," Vess said. Her tone was neutral, revealing nothing. "It's doing my job," Sarah replied quietly. "That's interesting. Because your job description doesn't include advanced tactical command, or executing defensive strategies that I've only seen in classified military archives." Vess set the datapad down in front of Sarah. "So I did some research on you." Sarah's stomach tightened. but she kept her expression calm, and your academy records are perfect. Top marks in every category. Excellent recommendations. Vess leaned closer, but there are gaps. 3 years before you enrolled at the academy, where there's no record of you at all, almost like you didn't exist. I was traveling, Sarah said. Seeing the galaxy before I settled into a career. Traveling where? Doing what? Vess pressed. Because those defensive tactics you used? They're from Terran's Special Operations Doctrine, classified doctrine that Academy students shouldn't have access to. Sarah met the Quillen's gaze steadily. I studied history, military campaigns, tactical theory. Maybe I got creative. Maybe, Vess said slowly, or maybe you're not who you claim to be. Before Sarah could respond, alarms blared again. Both officers rushed to the tactical display. Crimson Dagger ships had returned. But their approach was different this time. Cautious, probing, testing defenses. Rather than attacking, Sarah's hands moved across the controls instinctively. They're learning. They want to understand what happened last time. She coordinated the response with quiet efficiency, reading the enemy's movements like a language only she understood. She positioned defenders to cover weak points before the enemy even probed them. She adjusted shield frequencies moments before incoming scans. The Crimson Daggers retreated again after an hour. This time they left behind surveillance drones disguised as debris. Sarah spotted them immediately and had them destroyed. As the enemy ships vanished, they broadcast a message. Clever, coalition. But tricks only work once. The words sent a chill through the command center. The pirates were adapting. They were studying, and they would be back. Over the next few days, the base divided into factions. Some crew members trusted Sarah because she'd saved their lives. Others feared what she represented, an unknown element with skills that shouldn't exist. Commander Krath recovered enough to return to limited duty. He called Sarah to his quarters, his injuries still visible beneath medical wrappings. I requested your full military file from Coalition Central, he said without preamble. They sent me what I already had. Standard records, nothing unusual. But when I asked for deeper background checks, suddenly I hit security walls. Classified sections that require authorization I don't have. Sarah said nothing. Who are you? Krath demanded. Really? I'm a Coalition officer trying to keep this base safe, Sarah answered carefully. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give, sir. Krath's alien features hardened. You're hiding something. And on my base, secrets get people killed. Sarah met his gaze. The only thing getting people killed is the Crimson Daggers. Let me do my job, and we'll all survive this. The stalemate held, but trust had fractured. Sarah felt eyes watching her constantly. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. She spent her nights alone in the tactical center, running simulations, modeling attack patterns, preparing for what she knew was coming, because the Crimson Daggers hadn't given up. They'd gone quiet, which was worse than attacking. Coalition scouts reported that the pirate fleet had consolidated at a hidden base in the asteroid belt. They were gathering forces, planning something big. 2 weeks after the first attack, a young Xanathi pilot named Kerr approached Sarah in the mess hall. He was one of the few who still spoke to her openly. Captain Chen, he said, using a rank she didn't have. The crew is talking. Some say you're a spy. Others say you're some kind of enhanced human. I wanted to ask you directly, are you here to help us or hurt us? Sarah appreciated the directness. I'm here to help. That's all I can promise. Good enough for me, Kerr said. You saved my life during that attack. I trust actions more than words. He paused. But you should know Commander Krath is under pressure from Coalition High Command. They want answers about you. He might not be able to protect you much longer. I don't need protection, Sarah said quietly. I just need time. Time for what? Sarah looked toward the tactical displays visible through the mess hall windows. To finish what's coming? That night, her predictions came true. Long-range sensors detected massive movement in the asteroid belt. The Crimson Daggers weren't hiding anymore. They were coming, and they were bringing everything they had. Coalition intelligence confirmed it by morning. 40 warships, including several captured coalition vessels. It was an armada designed to crush Tharsis 7 completely. High Command sent emergency orders, evacuate non-essential personnel. The main coalition fleet was 3 weeks away. Thor 7 would have to stand alone. Krath called an emergency staff meeting. The mood in the command center was grim. The base had 3 aging frigates and orbital defense platforms designed to handle raiders, not a full fleet engagement. "We're outgunned 5-1, a Rex officer reported. Survival probability is less than 8%. "We hold as long as we can," Krath said heavily. "We die with honor." Sarah stood up. Every eye turned to her. "We don't have to die at all." "Math doesn't lie, human," the Quillen tactical officer said coldly. "Their firepower exceeds our defensive capacity by—" "I know the numbers," Sarah interrupted. "But numbers only tell part of the story. We can win this." The room erupted in protests. Impossible, delusional, suicide. But Krath raised a hand for silence. He studied Sarah with those alien eyes that had seen countless battles. "Explained," he ordered Sarah. Brought up the holographic display of the asteroid fields surrounding Tharsis 7. "They have superior numbers and firepower. We can't beat them in a straight fight. So we don't fight fair." "Elaborate," Krath said. "We have 18 hours before they arrive. That's enough time to turn this battlefield into a trap they won't see coming." Sarah's fingers danced across the controls, highlighting positions in the asteroid field. "We mine key asteroids, reposition orbital platforms, and hide our frigates among the debris. We make them think they're attacking a desperate defense, when really, they're walking into an ambush." "That's insane," Vess said. "The amount of coordination required—" "I can do it," Sarah said with absolute certainty. "If you trust me?" The silence stretched. Finally, Krath spoke. "You saved us once. I'm gambling you can do it again." He turned to the crew. "Follow her orders. All of them. For the next 18 hours. Sarah transformed Thar 7. She had crews working around the clock, positioning mines, recalibrating weapons, preparing the battlefield with meticulous precision. She moved through the base like someone who had done this before. Her commands clear and confident. Vess watched from a distance, datapad in hand. She saw how Sarah anticipated problems before they arose, how she knew exactly where each asset needed to be. This wasn't genius improvisation. This was experience. "You're not learning tactics," Vess said quietly, approaching Sarah during a brief rest period. "You're remembering them. You've commanded like this before, haven't you?" Sarah's exhausted eyes met Vess's. "Does it matter? If I have, does that change what needs to happen?" "It changes everything," Vess replied. "Because whoever you really are, you're very good at this. And that means you're also very dangerous." "Right now," Sarah said, "dangerous is exactly what we need." As the final preparations completed, Sarah stood in the command center and looked at the holographic battlefield. Every piece was in position. Every contingency planned. It would work if her crew trusted her, and if the enemy's arrogance held. The sensors detected incoming ships. 40 warships, just as predicted, led by a massive captured dreadnought. "They're here," Kerr reported from his fighter. Sarah took a deep breath. "Everyone to battle stations. And remember, stay calm, follow the plan, and we'll all see tomorrow." But even as she spoke those confident words, doubt gnawed at her. Because she knew what was coming. She'd fought battles like this before, in another life. And she remembered the cost of victory. The crimson daggers entered weapons range. And Warlord Zarkoth's voice boomed across all frequencies. "Coalition base, you will surrender immediately. Resistance is futile. This is your only warning." Sarah activated the CUM system. Her response was simple and defiant. "Come and take it." The battle was about to begin. End of part 2. She was treated as a rookie until her enemy requested to parley with the commander. Part 3. The battle. The Crimson Dagger's fleet approached like a wave of death. 40 warships moved in perfect formation, their weapons charging, their shields shimmering with deadly energy. At their center, the captured coalition dreadnought. Massive vessel that should never have fallen into pirate hands loomed like a dark promise of destruction. On Tharsis 7, Sarah stood at the command center, her hands steady on the controls despite the fear trying to claw its way up her throat. Around her, the crew waited in tense silence. They had followed her instructions, positioned everything according to her plan. Now they would see if her gamble would pay off or get them all killed. Enemy fleet entering outer perimeter, Kerr reported from his fighter position. They're maintaining wedge formation, advancing at 0.6 velocity. Sarah studied the holographic display. The enemy formation was textbook concentrated force, maximum firepower, designed to punch through defenses and overwhelm quickly. It was exactly what she'd predicted. "Hold position," she ordered quietly. "Let them come to us." The first enemy ships reached the asteroid field. Immediately, they encountered the mines Sarah had planted. Explosions blossomed in the void, taking out 2 smaller escort vessels and damaging several others. Direct hit. A Vrex gunner shouted, but Sarah didn't celebrate. They're adjusting course, compacting formation to avoid the minefield. She watched the enemy fleet tighten their formation, ships moving closer together to navigate through the cleared paths in the asteroid field. Perfect. They were doing exactly what she needed, Warlord. Zarkov's voice crackled over the communications. Impressive coalition. But mines won't save you. The orbital defense platforms opened fire, their cannons targeting the lead ships. The enemy shields absorbed the impacts, but Sarah hadn't positioned those platforms to destroy ships. She'd positioned them to herd the enemy fleet, forcing them into tighter and tighter formations. "Enemy returning fire on Platform 6, Vess reported. "Platform destroyed," expected Sarah said calmly. "Rotate Platform 3 into position. Maintain crossfire pattern." The battle intensified. The Crimson Daggers pressed forward aggressively, destroying platforms, taking hits from the mines, but never stopping. They had overwhelming numbers, and they knew it. For every ship they lost, they had 10 more pushing forward. Krath watched Sarah orchestrate the defense, his injuries preventing him from doing more than observe. He saw her hands moving across controls with practiced ease, saw her reading enemy movements before they happened, anticipating their responses. "You've done this before," he said quietly, just for her to hear. "This isn't theory or luck. You've commanded fleet actions." Sarah didn't deny it. She couldn't. Her focus remained on the battle. "Does it matter right now?" "It will," Krath promised. "After we survive." "If we survive," Sarah thought, but didn't say. The enemy fleet reached the inner perimeter. They had lost 6 ships, but maintained formation and momentum. Their weapons locked onto the base itself, preparing for the final assault. "They're preparing to fire on the base," Vess said urgently. "Shields at 60% and dropping." Sarah counted silently in her head. 5.4.2. Now she said, "Power up the frigates." In the asteroid field, 3 coalition frigates that had been powered down and drifting like debris suddenly roared to life. Their engines ignited, their weapons charged, and they emerged from hiding in the middle of the compressed enemy formation. The Crimson Daggers had no time to react. The frigates weren't trying to fight the enemy fleet. That would be suicide. Instead, they targeted 3 specific asteroids that Sarah had pre-weakened with precisely placed mining charges. The frigates fired. The asteroids shattered. And suddenly, the space between the enemy ships, filled with deadly debris, chunks of rock traveling at incredible velocity tore through shields and hulls. The tightly packed formation that had seemed like such a strength became a death trap. Ships collided, trying to avoid the debris field. Shields failed under the barrage. Chaos erupted in the pirate fleet. Direct hits on multiple targets. Kerr shouted, "They're breaking formation." But Sarah wasn't finished. As the enemy fleet scattered, they naturally moved toward what appeared to be clear escape routes through the asteroid field. But Sarah had prepared those routes specifically. Hidden defense platforms activated, catching fleeing ships in deadly crossfire. More mines detonated. Every path led into another trap. "They're trying to retreat," a Vrex officer announced. "Let them," Sarah ordered. Guide them toward Corridor Delta. Corridor Delta was the largest clear path through the asteroid field. The Crimson Daggers fled toward it desperately, trying to regroup and escape. But as they entered the corridor, Sarah triggered her final trap. Asteroids on both sides of the corridor, hollowed out and packed with explosives, detonated simultaneously. The corridor became a killing field. Ships that survived turned and fled in random directions, all cohesion lost. Within 20 minutes of the battle starting, Crimson Daggers had lost 13 ships destroyed and twice that many damaged. Their perfect formation had become a scattered, panicked rout. Warlord Zarkath's voice came over the come again, but this time it held no confidence. All ships retreat. Retreat now. The surviving pirate vessels scattered into hyperspace, abandoning damaged ships and escape pods. The mighty fleet that had arrived to crush Tharsis fled in complete disarray as the last enemy ship vanished. The command center erupted in cheers. Crew members embraced, celebrating impossible victory. They had been facing certain death, and somehow, they were still alive. Sarah stood quietly at the command console, watching the tactical display clear. Her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. She felt exhausted, hollow, and old beyond her years. Kerr landed his fighter and ran to the command center, his young face glowing with excitement. "We did it. We actually did it. Captain Chen, that was incredible." The other crew members took up the chant. "Captain Chen. Captain Chen." But Sarah barely heard them. She was staring at the casualty reports. 3 coalition personnel killed, 12 injured. Minimal by any standard, especially against such overwhelming odds. But still, 3 people were dead. 3 families would get notifications. 3 lives ended because of decisions she made. "Sarah," Krath said, approaching her. His voice was gentle, despite his intimidating appearance. "You saved us. You should be celebrating." 3 people died, Sarah said quietly. "And 200 lived," Krath countered. "You made the hard choices. That's what command means." Before Sarah could respond, the communications officer shouted, "Commander, incoming transmission from the Crimson Daggers. They're requesting a parley." Celebration died instantly. Everyone turned to the cum station. A parley? Pirates didn't negotiate. They took what they wanted or died trying. "Who are they asking for?" Krath demanded. The communications officer looked confused. "They're asking specifically for the commander. They say they'll only negotiate with the commander. They're broadcasting on all channels." Silence fell over the command center. Every eye slowly turned toward. Sarah Vest stepped forward, her datapad held up. "I just received this." It came through encrypted Coalition intelligence channels. She read from the screen. Coalition intelligence recognizes transmission signature. Source identified as Warlord Zarkath, leader of Crimson Daggers. Message priority? Urgent. Requests parley with, she paused, with Commander Alina Reeves. The name hit like a physical blow. Sarah Lana closed her eyes. The secret she'd kept for 3 years, the identity she'd tried to bury, was now exposed in front of everyone. Krath's voice was cold. "Who is Commander Alina Reeves?" Vess continued reading from her datapad, her voice filled with growing shock. "Commander Alina Reeves, former Terran Expeditionary Force tactical record, includes victory at Kronos Station. Successful ambush at Delta Serpentes and..." She stopped, her 4 eyes widening. "And what?" Krath demanded. "The siege of Helion Prime," Vess finished quietly, "where she ordered the destruction of a civilian convoy being used as an enemy shield, 2,000 enemy combatants killed. The action ended a 3-year war but destroyed her career. She was forced into retirement." Vess looked at Sarah. "The media called her the Butcher of Helion Prime." The command center was utterly silent. The crew looked at Sarah as if seeing a completely different person. Not a rookie lieutenant. Not even a talented officer. But something far more dangerous. Warrior with a past soaked in blood and victory, Sarah opened her eyes and straightened her shoulders. The mask was gone. There was no point in pretending anymore. "My name is Alina Reeves," she said clearly. I came here under false identity to escape my past. I didn't want to command again. I didn't want to make those choices again. She looked around at the crew. But when you were attacked, I couldn't watch you die. I'm sorry for the deception. Krath's expression was unreadable. The enemy knows who you are. They're asking for you specifically. They recognize the tactics, Alina said. Zarkith is no fool. He knows what happened here wasn't luck. Should we respond to the Parley request? The communications officer asked nervously. Krath looked at Alina. That's not my decision anymore. Technically, you outrank me. You're a full commander. I'm just a base commander. She was treated as a rookie until her enemy requested to parley with the commander. Part 4. The Parley, the abandoned mining station, floated in the asteroid field like a ghost from the past. Once it had processed valuable minerals from the surrounding rocks. Now, it was just a hollow shell. It's perfectly neutral ground for a meeting. Neither side truly trusted. Alina Reeves stood in the docking bay of the Coalition shuttle, checking her sidearm one last time. She wore her proper uniform now, the one with commander rank insignia she'd kept hidden for 3 years. It felt heavy, like putting on old armor that no longer fit quite right. You don't have to do this, Krath said beside her. The Vrex commander had insisted on accompanying her, along with Vess and 2 armed guards. We can send someone else. He asked for me specifically, Alina replied. If I don't show, he'll know we're afraid. And fear is a weakness he'll exploit. Are you afraid? Vess asked, studying Alina with her multiple eyes. Alina considered the question honestly. Terrified. But not of Zarkith, then what? Of who I become when I'm Commander Reeves again? Alina answered quietly. The shuttle docked at the mining station. As they stepped through the airlock, Alina felt her military training taking over completely. Her eyes scanned for threats, escape routes, ambush positions. Her hand stayed near her weapon. Every muscle was ready. Warlord Zarkith waited in what had once been the station's main control room. He was massive even for a Kravian, standing nearly 3 meters tall with thick armor plating covering his body. His reputation was built on 4 decades of victories against Coalition forces. He was a tactical genius, a brutal fighter, and someone who commanded absolute loyalty from his crews. But when Zarkith saw Alina, something unexpected happened. The fearsome warlord straightened, and his expression shifted to something that looked almost like respect. Commander Reeves, he said in heavily accented standard. I had hoped the reports were wrong. I had hoped you'd stayed in retirement. Krath's weapon raised slightly, but Alina gestured for him to lower it. Hello, Zarkith. I see your reputation for intelligence is accurate. You recognized my tactics. How could I not? Zarkith's laugh was bitter. The asteroid ambush at Helion Prime? The shield manipulation tactics from Kronos Station? You used terrain like a weapon better than anyone I've ever faced. He gestured around the room. When my ships fled from Tharsis 7, I knew. Only one human commander fights like that. Krath couldn't stay silent. You called this Parley to confirm her identity? I called this Parley, Zarkith said, his tone becoming serious. 'Cause I'm not foolish enough to keep fighting Commander Alina Reeves. My fleet can beat any normal Coalition force. But her. He shook his head. She's different. Different how? Vess asked suspiciously. Zarkith pulled up a holographic display showing historical battles. The siege of Kronos Station Shea held a base for 6 months against forces 10 times her size, using nothing but clever positioning and supply management. The ambush at Delta Serpent's She turned a retreat into a counterattack that destroyed an entire enemy battle group. And Helion Prime paused. Helion Prime ended a 3-year war in a single day. At the cost of 2,000 lives, Alina said quietly. Don't glorify it. I'm not glorifying it, Zarkith countered. I'm acknowledging it. You made the hard choice. Your superiors ordered you to use civilian ships as target practice to demoralize the enemy. Instead, you developed a precision strike that minimized civilian casualties while ending the siege. But when the public discovered civilians died, your superiors made you the scapegoat. Lena's eyes widened. How do you know that? Because the Crimson Daggers aren't just pirates, Zarkith said. We're refugees. Former coalition citizens from colonies that were abandoned during the expansion collapse. We have sources inside Coalition Command. We know the truth about Helion Prime, how they betrayed you, how they buried the real orders, how they destroyed your career to save their own reputations. Krath turned to Alina. Is this true? Alina's jaw tightened. It doesn't matter now. What matters is why we're here. It matters to me, Krath said firmly. Were you following orders at Helion Prime? I was modifying orders, Alina admitted. My superiors wanted maximum civilian casualties to break enemy morale. I refused. I found a better way that ended the war with fewer deaths. But some civilians still died, and when the news broke, I was the convenient villain. Silence filled the room. Vess's datapad beeped as she accessed classified files, her expression growing more shocked with each line she read. It's all here. The original orders. The cover-up. Coalition intelligence classified it all. Zarkith gestured to the holographic display. This is why I'm willing to negotiate, Commander. Because I've studied your career, you're not a butcher. You're a tactician who understands that sometimes the right choice is the one that haunts you forever. Get to the point, Zarkith, Alina said. What do you want? The warlord pulled up a new display showing coalition supply routes and struggling outer colonies. The Crimson Daggers have been raiding these sectors for a reason. We're not criminals. We're trying to survive. These colonies were abandoned by the Coalition during the economic collapse 15 years ago. Our people are starving while the Coalition hoards resources for core worlds. Lena studied the data carefully. The intelligence was accurate. She could see the patterns of need, the desperation behind the raids. You're fighting for survival, not profit, exactly, Zarkith said. But the Coalition labels us pirates and sends forces to destroy us. We've been fighting this losing battle for years. So what do you propose? Krath asked. Zarkith said, safe passage for food and medical supplies to the outer colonies. In exchange, we stop raiding Coalition vessels and provide intelligence on actual pirate threats in these sectors. We don't negotiate with criminals? Vess said automatically. Then you'll keep fighting us, Zarkith countered. And eventually, you'll lose. Maybe not today. Maybe not against Commander Reeves. But she won't be here forever. He looked at Alina. You know I'm right. You've already calculated the strategic situation. The Coalition can't afford to keep wasting resources fighting refugees when there are real threats out there. Alina had indeed been calculating. The data made sense. The Crimson Daggers weren't the real enemy. They were a symptom of a larger problem. Fighting them was inefficient, costly, and ultimately counterproductive. But accepting that meant going against Coalition policy. It meant risking her career again. It meant making another hard choice that would have consequences she couldn't predict. Lieutenant Chinor Commander Reeves, or whoever you are, Krath said, you don't have authority to make this agreement. No, Alina agreed quietly. But I have the authority to recommend it to High Command. And I have the tactical knowledge to know that Zarkath is right. This conflict is draining resources from more critical threats. Provisional ceasefire. You provide detailed intelligence on your supply needs and confirmed pirate activity in these sectors. I'll forward your proposal through proper channels. No promises beyond that. Your word is good enough, Zarkith said. For now, as they prepared to leave, Zarkith called out one more time. Commander, one more thing. What you did at Helion Primate was brutal. But the alternative would have been 3 more years of war and millions dead. You made the hard choice. He met her eyes. That's why they fear you. Not because you're ruthless, but because you understand that sometimes the right choice is the one that destroys you. Alina had no response to that. She simply nodded and returned to the shuttle. The flight back to Tharsa 7 was silent. Krath and Vess both seemed lost in thought, processing everything they'd learned. Alina stared out the viewport, watching asteroids drift past. What will you do? Krath finally asked. My job, Alina said. I'll submit the report to High Command. Recommend they consider Zarkov's proposal, and prepare for whatever consequences come. They'll remove you, Vess said quietly. High Command can't let the Butcher of Hellion Prime represent them in negotiations. Probably Alina agreed. But that's not my concern right now. Then what is? Krath asked. Alina looked at him, making sure this base and these people survive. That's all that matters. When they docked at Tharseseven, Alina was immediately escorted to her quarters. Not arrested, exactly, but clearly confined. Krath had already sent an emergency transmission to Coalition High Command, reporting both her true identity and Zarkath's proposal. The response came faster than expected. A Coalition intelligence ship was already en route, scheduled to arrive within 2 days. Alina was to be transferred to Core Worlds for debriefing, military speak for interrogation, and probable court-martial. That night, Alina sat alone in her quarters, staring at the walls that had been her sanctuary for 3 years. She'd come to Tharsis-7 to escape Commander Reeves, to be someone different, someone unburdened by impossible choices and haunting memories. But you can't outrun who you are. And sometimes, the person you're running from is exactly who's needed. A soft knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Kerr stood outside, his young face serious. "Captain Commandra, I don't know what to call you anymore," he admitted. "Alina is fine," she said tiredly. She was treated as a rookie until her enemy requested to parley with the Commander Rush Hash. Part 5. The Commander's Choice. The Coalition intelligence ship arrived exactly when promised. It was a sleek vessel designed for quick insertions and extractions. The kind of ship that carried secrets and made problems disappear. Alina watched it dock from her confined quarters, knowing that once she boarded that ship, Lieutenant Sarah Chen would cease to exist entirely. Commander Krath came to escort her personally. His expression was difficult to read, but Alina sensed conflict in the way he moved. "They're here for you," Krath said simply.
"I know."
Alina stood and straightened her uniform. "Thank you for not putting me in chains." "I considered it," Krath admitted. "But you've done nothing wrong. Deception, yes. But your actions saved this base twice. That counts for something." As they walked through the corridors toward the docking bay, Alina noticed crew members stopping to watch. Some looked angry, others confused. But many, especially the younger ones who'd fought under her command, looked sad to see her go. KIRR stood near the docking bay entrance, his normally cheerful face serious. "This isn't right," he said as Alina approached. "You're a hero, not a criminal." "The galaxy isn't always fair, Kerr," Alina replied gently. "But thank you for believing in me." The docking bay doors opened, and Alina froze. Because the person waiting for her wasn't some anonymous intelligence operative. It was Admiral Torres himself, one of the most powerful figures in Coalition military command. His presence meant this situation was far more serious than Alina had thought. "Commander Reeves," Torres said formally, "you've caused quite a situation." "Sir," Alina replied, with a proper salute. "I understand I'm to be transported too. We'll discuss that." Torres cut her off. He turned to Krath. "I need to speak with your crew. Assemble them in the main hangar." 30 minutes later, the entire base complement stood assembled. Alina stood at the front, flanked by Torres and Krath. Feeling like she was on trial, Torres activated a holographic display showing intelligence reports. 3 days ago, we received Warlord Zarkath's intelligence data through proper diplomatic channels. His information regarding outer colony conditions was accurate. More importantly, his data revealed a network of actual pirate operations we didn't know existed. The crew murmured with surprise. Torres continued. "The Crimson Daggers have been fighting these criminal organizations while we assumed they were all enemies. The intelligence Commander Reeves obtained in her parley has allowed us to redirect resources to real threats." "That doesn't excuse her deception," Vess pointed out. "No, it doesn't," Torres agreed. "Commander Reeves violated protocol by assuming false identity. She deceived her superiors and crew. By regulation, she should face court-martial." He paused. "However, her actions also saved this base, brokered a critical intelligence arrangement, and demonstrated tactical excellence that exceeds expectations." Alina stood silently. Unsure where this was going, Torres turned to address her directly. "Commander, you were forced out of service after Hellion Prime because you embarrassed people in power. They made you take the blame for their orders. I've reviewed the classified files. I know what really happened, sir. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. The Coalition made a mistake 15 years ago, Torres said. We lost one of our best tactical minds because we cared more about politics than truth. I won't make that mistake again. He pulled up an official document on the holographic display. By emergency authority granted during active combat operations, Commander Krath has submitted a field promotion and permanent. Assignment for Tactical Advisor to Tharsis 7. Elena's eyes widened. Sir, I don't understand. I'm promoting you too, Captain, Krath said, stepping forward with a slight smile, and assigning you permanently to this base under my command. The paperwork went through 6 hours ago. Torres nodded. Admiral orders supersede field promotions. However, they don't supersede them quickly. Due to bureaucratic processing times, it will take approximately 6 weeks for my retrieval order to override Commander Kraft's promotion order. Elena understood suddenly. Torres was giving her in high command time. Time for her success at Tharsis 7 to become undeniable. Time for the political situation to shift. Time for cooler heads to prevail. 6 weeks is a long time, Torres continued. Many things can happen. Perhaps Captain Chen's tactical improvements will make Tharsis 7 the most effective forward base in this sector. Perhaps High Command will decide they value effectiveness over politics. He looked at Elena meaningfully. Perhaps second chances are possible. Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Sir, I won't waste this opportunity. See that you don't, Torres said. Then, more quietly, the galaxy needs commanders like you, Reeves, people who make the hard choices and live with the consequences. Don't let politics destroy that again. Torres departed, leaving Elena standing in the hangar with the assembled crew. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Kerr started clapping. Slowly, others joined. Within moments, most of the crew was applauding. Not everyone. Vess and several other officers stood with arms crossed. Still suspicious, but enough to make Elena's eyes sting with unexpected tears. Attention. Krath's voice cut through the applause. Captain Chen has work to do. And so do all of you. Dismissed. As the crew dispersed, Vess approached Elena. I still don't completely trust you, the Quillen said bluntly. You're keeping secrets. I know, Elena admitted. But I promise you this. Every decision I make will be for the safety of this crew. Good, Vess said. Because I'll be watching. And if you betray that promise, rank won't protect you. Elena respected the honesty. Understood. Over the next weeks, Elena transformed Tharsis 7. She implemented new defensive protocols, trained crews in advanced tactics, and established communication networks with reformed pirate groups who were willing to trade information for supplies. The base became a model of efficiency. The Crimson Daggers honored their ceasefire agreement. Zarkith even visited once, bringing intelligence about a major criminal operation planning to attack Coalition medical transports. The information saved lives, improved the value of diplomatic engagement. Coalition High Command, watching from a distance, saw results they couldn't ignore. The political pressure to remove Elena lessened as her success grew. Eventually, the retrieval orders were quietly withdrawn. One evening, 3 months after her identity was revealed, Elena stood in the command center reviewing tactical reports when Kerr approached with a datapad. Captain, you have messages from 3 other Coalition bases. They're requesting tactical consultation. Elena raised an eyebrow. What kind of consultation? The kind where they've heard about the human commander who wins impossible battles, Kerr said with a grin. Word is spreading. They want to learn from you. Elena looked out at the stars beyond Tharsis 7's viewports. She thought about the years she'd spent hiding, trying to escape Commander Reeves and the weight of that identity. She thought about the crew who'd learned to trust her despite her deception. What will you tell them? Kerr asked. Elena smiled slowly. Tell them Commander Reeves is retired. But Captain Chen is available for consultation. She paused thoughtfully. And tell them I charge extra for impossible situations. Kerr laughed. They're going to love you, Captain. Or hate me, Elena said. Either way, they'll respect the work. She turned back to her reports, no longer hiding from who she was. The ghosts of Hellion Prime would always haunt her. The weight of command would never fully lift. But she'd learned something important. You can't run from your past, but you can choose how it shapes your future. Commander Alina Reeves had been broken by politics and betrayal. Lieutenant Sarah Chen had been born from that brokenness, trying to hide and heal. But Captain Chun Nat was something new. Someone who carried the scars of the past but wasn't defined by them. Someone who understood that humanity's greatest strength wasn't superior technology or overwhelming force. It was the stubborn refusal to accept that any situation was truly hopeless. In the distance, an alarm chimed softly. Another ship approaching. Another potential situation requiring attention. Alina pulled up the tactical display, her mind already analyzing vectors and possibilities. "Captain!" a voice called from the communications station. "Unknown vessel requesting permission to dock. They say they're here seeking asylum from a criminal organization." Lena considered the request. Unknown ships could be threats, but they could also be refugees needing help. Another choice. Another risk. Another opportunity to prove that sometimes the right answer was the one that looked impossible. "Grant them permission," Alina ordered. "But full security protocols? And someone bring Commander Krathile need his approval for asylum procedures." As the crew moved to execute her orders, Alina allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. She wasn't the frightened academy graduate who'd arrived months ago. She wasn't the haunted commander trying to disappear. She was exactly what she needed to be experienced enough to make hard choices, humble enough to know she couldn't make them alone, and brave enough to keep trying even when the weight felt unbearable.